The wind cuts across the Montana Badlands like a blade, carrying with it the scent of ancient stone and the promise of secrets buried for eons. Here, in the Hell Creek Formation, paleontologists have uncovered some of the most remarkable dinosaur fossils ever found, the final chapter of the Cretaceous period, frozen in stone just moments before the Great Extinction. But scattered among these bones lie traces of something that shouldn't exist, evidence of intelligence that predates humanity by 65 million years. In 2014, a team excavating a Triceratops site in North Dakota made a discovery that would challenge everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. Embedded in the same geological layer that held the dinosaurs' fossilized bones, they found what appeared to be deliberately shaped stones, objects that bore the unmistakable marks of intentional modification. The rocks had been chipped, flaked, and worked in patterns that suggested tool use. But tools require toolmakers, and in the late Cretaceous, the only creatures with the cognitive capacity for such work should have been nothing. Nothing at all. The implications crash over the scientific community like a wave. If these objects truly date to the age of dinosaurs, if they represent genuine evidence of prehistoric tool use, then we have been fundamentally wrong about the nature of intelligence on Earth. We have assumed, with the casual arrogance of our species, that consciousness and civilization began with us. We have looked at the 165 million years of dinosaur dominance and seen only a prelude to our own supposed greatness, a vast evolutionary warm-up act before the main event of human intelligence took the stage. But what if we were never the first? What if, in the deep time before our ancestors even dreamed of descending from the trees, other minds had already wrestled with the same questions that haunt us today? What if they had built, created, struggled, and ultimately failed in ways we can barely imagine? The fossil record, that incomplete archive of Earth's history, holds its secrets close. Of all the countless billions of organisms that have lived and died on this planet, less than 1% have left any trace for us to find. The rest have been erased by time, their stories dissolved by rain, crushed by shifting continents, or simply scattered by the relentless turning of the world. We find what remains, the bones, the shells, the occasional impression of a leaf or feather, and from these fragments we construct our understanding of the past. Yet even this meagre record tells us remarkable things about the creatures that ruled the Earth before us. The dinosaurs were not the lumbering, dim-witted monsters of popular imagination. Recent discoveries have revealed beings of startling complexity, creatures with elaborate social structures, sophisticated communication systems, and problem-solving abilities that rival many modern animals. Trudon, a small theropod discovered in Montana in 1855, possessed a brain proportionally larger than those of many mammals. Therizinosaurus, the massive scythe lizard of Asia, wielded claws the size of baseball bats with a precision that suggests fine motor control far beyond what their size would seem to allow. But intelligence alone does not make a civilization. What separates the construction of tools from the construction of cities? What transforms a clever animal into a being capable of contemplating the stars, recording its thoughts, and passing knowledge across generations? The answer lies not just in cognitive ability, but in the emergence of culture, technology, and the accumulated wisdom that builds upon itself across time. The methodical process of science demands skepticism, requires alternative explanations to be explored and eliminated one by one. Perhaps these North Dakota stones are merely unusual rock formations, shaped by geological processes into something that resembles tools. Perhaps they are the product of some unknown natural phenomenon, curiosities created by the same forces that occasionally carve stone into shapes that seem almost intentionally artistic. The scientific method has built-in safeguards against the human tendency to see patterns where none exist, to impose meaning onto randomness. But as researchers continue to examine the evidence, another possibility whispers at the edges of consciousness. What if our entire framework for understanding the past is incomplete? What if the very assumptions that underpin paleontology and archaeology have blinded us to evidence that has been hiding in plain sight? The late Cretaceous period, 100 to 66 million years ago, was a time of unprecedented biological diversity. The climate was warm and humid, with no polar ice caps and sea levels hundreds of feet higher than today. Vast inland seas divided the continents, creating a world of islands and archipelagos where evolution experimented with forms and functions that have no modern equivalent. In this greenhouse Earth, dinosaurs reached their zenith of size, diversity and complexity. Among them walked creatures that challenge our preconceptions at every turn. Parasaurolophus used elaborate cranial crests to produce haunting musical calls that could be heard for miles across the ancient landscape. Maiasaura, the good mother lizard discovered by Jack Horner in Montana, built communal nesting grounds and cared for their young with a dedication that rivals modern birds. The giant predator Giganotosaurus may have hunted in coordinated packs, using strategies that required planning, communication, and an understanding of group dynamics that speaks to sophisticated social intelligence. But perhaps most intriguingly, some dinosaurs were developing the neurological foundations necessary for advanced cognition. The troodontids, a family of small bird-like predators first described by paleontologist Dale Russell, possessed brains within large cerebral regions associated in modern animals with learning, memory, and social behavior. Their eyes were large and forward-facing, providing the binocular vision necessary for precise manipulation of objects. Their hands ended in grasping claws that could manipulate items with remarkable dexterity. In 1982, Russell posed a thought experiment that sent ripples through the scientific community. If the asteroid that ended the age of dinosaurs had never struck, if evolution had been allowed to continue its course uninterrupted, what might these intelligent dinosaurs have become? Russell imagined a hypothetical dinosauroid, a bipedal, large-brained descendant of Troodon that might have developed technology and civilization millions of years before mammals ever left their burrows. At the time, Russell's speculation was dismissed as entertaining but ultimately pointless science fiction. After all, evolution doesn't work backward, and we can never truly know what might have been. But now, as evidence of possible dinosaur tool use emerges from the ancient sediments of North Dakota, Russell's thought experiment takes on a more urgent quality. What if it wasn't speculation at all? What if it was prophecy? The North Dakota discoveries remain controversial, as they should be. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and the scientific community continues to debate whether these worked stones represent genuine tools or natural formations. But the very fact that such a debate is possible marks a profound shift in our thinking about the deep past. The comfortable certainties of yesterday, that intelligence is young, that civilization is a recent invention, that we are the first and only species to truly understand the world, have begun to crack like old paint. Modern paleontology has revealed dinosaurs to be far more sophisticated than ever imagined. Recent studies of fossilized brain tissue preserved in remarkable detail in specimens from China and the United States show neural structures of surprising complexity. CT scans of dinosaur skulls reveal enlarged cerebral regions and intricate inner ear structures that suggest advanced spatial reasoning and sensory processing abilities. Some species appear to have possessed color vision superior to our own, while others developed acoustic communication systems of remarkable sophistication. The discovery of dinosaur feathers, first documented in the 1990s in China's Liaoning province, revolutionized our understanding of these ancient creatures. These weren't just primitive proto-feathers, but complex, colorful plumes that spoke to advanced behavioral systems. If dinosaurs could develop such intricate display structures, what else might they have been capable of? What other behaviors, what other achievements, have we overlooked simply because we never thought to look for them? As the sun sets over the Badlands where so many secrets still lie buried, the landscape takes on an alien quality. The eroded hills and exposed rock faces become the ruins of an unimaginably ancient world, a place where giants walked and perhaps dreamed. Somewhere in the darkness gathering round the buttes, time itself seems to bend, bringing that distant epoch momentarily closer. For just an instant, it becomes possible to hear the echo of voices across the eons, the calls of creatures whose intelligence we never recognized, whose achievements we never imagined, whose very existence challenges the story we tell ourselves about our place in the cosmos. The evidence sits silently in museum drawers and laboratory storage, waiting to reveal its secrets. But already, it has accomplished something remarkable. It has opened a door in our minds to possibilities we never dared consider. In the space of a few discoveries, the history of intelligence on Earth has become a question rather than a certainty, and the age of dinosaurs has transformed from a prehistoric prologue into something far more disturbing and wonderful. As the first stars appear in the darkening sky, tomorrow will bring more laboratories, more tests, more peer reviews. It will bring skeptical colleagues and demanding analysis, careful examination, and cautious conclusions. But tonight, in this liminal space between discovery and verification, anything is possible. The question that haunts the darkness forms slowly, as inevitable as the turning of the Earth itself. What else lies buried in the deep time before us, waiting to rewrite everything we thought we knew about intelligence, about civilization, and about our own cosmic significance? The answer, if it exists at all, lies hidden in 165 million years of dinosaur history, a span of time so vast that it makes our entire species seem like a brief flicker in the darkness. And somewhere in that immensity, in layers of rock and time that dwarf human comprehension, the truth about Earth's first civilization may be waiting to emerge from its ancient slumber. The human mind struggles with deep time like a drowning swimmer fights against an infinite ocean. We measure our lives in decades, our civilizations in millennia, our species' existence in hundreds of thousands of years. But the reign of the dinosaurs stretched across 165 million years, a span so vast that it dwarfs human comprehension. To grasp this temporal immensity, imagine compressing all of human history, from the first cave paintings to the space age, into a single day. On this scale, the dinosaurs ruled the Earth for more than a year and a half. Within that unimaginable expanse of time, what could have emerged? What peaks of intelligence? What heights of achievement? What civilizations might have risen and fallen, while leaving barely a whisper in the geological record? The very magnitude of dinosaur dominance forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our assumptions about intelligence on Earth may be catastrophically wrong. The fossil record, for all its revelations, remains a library with most of its books burned. Paleontologists estimate that we have discovered perhaps 1/10 of 1% of all dinosaur species that ever lived. The rest vanished into the same oblivion that claims nearly everything: the relentless recycling of stone, the grinding of tectonic plates, the slow dissolution of time itself. What we find are the lucky few, bones that happen to be buried in just the right sediments, under just the right conditions, in just the right places to survive 65 million years of planetary transformation. This preservation bias skews our understanding in profound ways. We find the bones of creatures that lived near water, where rapid burial was possible. We discover the remains of animals that possessed hard parts capable of fossilization. We uncover fossils from regions that happen to experience the right geological conditions for preservation. But what about the others? What about the creatures that lived in environments hostile to fossilization? What about those whose bodies contained few or no hard parts? What about the evidence of behavior, of culture, of intelligence itself? Ephemeral traces that dissolve like morning mist before the juggernaut of geological time. Consider the staggering intelligence that surrounds us in the modern world, intelligence that leaves no fossil record whatsoever. The complex social structures of dolphins, who pass cultural knowledge through generations and develop regional dialects. The tool use of crows, who not only make implements, but craft them to solve specific problems they have never encountered before. The mathematical precision of honeybee communication, encoded in dances that convey distance, direction, and quality of food sources with remarkable accuracy. None of this cognitive sophistication would survive in stone. None of it would speak to future paleontologists of the intelligence that once flourished on Earth. The dinosaurs possessed advantages for developing intelligence that we are only beginning to appreciate. Their 165 million year tenure provided evolutionary time on a scale that makes human development seem like a brief evolutionary experiment. During this vast epoch, they diversified into forms that filled every ecological niche, from tiny insectivores to massive herbivores, from swift predators to soaring giants. They developed complex social behaviors, sophisticated communication systems, and neural architectures that in some cases rivaled or exceeded those of modern mammals. The troodontids, in particular, challenge every assumption we hold about prehistoric intelligence. Troodon formosus, first described from a single tooth found in Montana's Judith River Formation, possessed a brain-to-body ratio that approached that of modern birds, and birds, as we now know, are among the most intelligent animals on Earth. But Troodon was no small songbird. These creatures stood nearly 6 feet tall, possessed forward-facing eyes that provided stereoscopic vision, and wielded hands equipped with a sickle-shaped claw capable of precise manipulation. Recent discoveries have revealed even more sophisticated neural architectures among dinosaurs. CT scans of Alioramus skulls, a tyrannosaur from Mongolia, show enlarged regions of the brain associated with spatial reasoning and sensory integration. Borogovia, another troodontid, possessed inner ear structures of remarkable complexity, suggesting advanced balance and spatial orientation capabilities that would have been essential for intricate motor skills. Most remarkably, some hadrosaur species developed elaborate cranial chambers that functioned as resonating organs, capable of producing complex vocalizations across a range of frequencies that exceeds human speech. The evidence for sophisticated dinosaur cognition extends far beyond brain anatomy. Fossil trackways reveal coordinated group movement patterns that suggest complex social organization. Nesting sites show evidence of communal care, with multiple adults tending shared rookeries in ways that require cooperation and communication. Some species appear to have engaged in ritualized combat, following rules and conventions that speak to cultural transmission of behavioral norms. Perhaps most intriguingly, recent discoveries have uncovered what appear to be dinosaur dance floors, large cleared areas where multiple trackways converge in intricate patterns. These sites, found in Colorado and other western states, show evidence of repeated use over extended periods. The arrangements are too complex and purposeful to be random, too organized to be mere feeding or drinking areas. They suggest gatherings, ceremonies, perhaps even artistic expression on a scale that dwarfs human achievement. But intelligence alone does not guarantee the preservation of its traces across geological time. Human civilization, for all its monuments and machines, would leave remarkably few recognizable artifacts after 65 million years of erosion, tectonics, and decay. Our cities would crumble to dust, our roads would be ground to sand, our plastic waste would decompose or be subducted into the Earth's mantle. Even our most durable creations, carved stone monuments, metal structures, radioactive waste, would either erode away or be recycled by the planet's geological processes. What then of a dinosaur civilization? If such a thing existed, what traces might survive the vast spans of time that separate us from the Cretaceous world? The answer is both humbling and terrifying. Almost nothing at all. The geological processes that shape our planet operate on scales that dwarf not just human history, but the entire duration of complex life on Earth. Mountain ranges rise and fall like waves on a cosmic ocean. Continents drift across the globe, colliding and separating with forces that obliterate entire landscapes. The seafloor spreads and subducts, carrying ancient sediments into the mantle, where they are recycled into magma. Even the most durable materials, granite, steel, diamond itself, eventually surrender to the relentless forces of change. Yet some traces can survive if they are encoded in the right materials and preserved under the right conditions. Isotopic signatures in ancient rocks can reveal the presence of industrial processes millions of years after the industries themselves have vanished. Unusual concentrations of rare elements can mark the locations of ancient mining operations. Changes in atmospheric composition, recorded in ice cores or sediment layers, can persist long after the civilizations that caused them have been forgotten. The search for such traces has led to the development of an entirely new field of study: the detection of ancient technological civilizations through their geological signatures. This discipline, pioneered by researchers like Gavin Schmidt of NASA's Goddard Institute and Adam Frank of the University of Rochester, seeks to answer a question that would have been dismissed as science fiction just decades ago. How would we recognize the remnants of a pre-human industrial civilization? Their work has revealed the profound limitations of the archaeological record. Human industrial activity has been intensive for only about 200 years, a geological instant. Yet already our impact on the planet's chemistry is becoming embedded in the rock record. Future geologists will be able to identify the Anthropocene epoch by its distinctive signatures: elevated carbon dioxide levels, unusual isotopic ratios, mass extinctions, and the global distribution of synthetic materials. But even these dramatic markers will fade with time, becoming increasingly difficult to detect as millions of years pass. If human civilization ended tomorrow, how long would its traces remain visible? Computer models suggest that most of our infrastructure would be unrecognizable within 10,000 years. Our cities would be overgrown ruins, our roads would be broken stones scattered in forgotten valleys. After 1,000,000 years, only the most durable artifacts would remain, perhaps some ceramics, some metal objects in very dry environments, some radioactive waste in deep storage facilities. After 65 million years, the span that separates us from the dinosaurs, virtually nothing recognizable would remain. This realization forces a radical reconsideration of what we might find if dinosaur civilizations once existed. We would not expect to find dinosaur cities, dinosaur roads, dinosaur temples. These would have been erased by time long ago. Instead, we would need to look for subtler signatures, unusual chemical compositions in ancient rocks, anomalous distributions of rare elements, isotopic ratios that suggest industrial processes rather than natural phenomena. And indeed, when we look closely at the geological record of the Cretaceous period, anomalies begin to emerge. Certain rock formations show unexplained enrichments of rare earth elements. Others display isotopic signatures that deviate from expected natural patterns. The famous iridium layer that marks the end Cretaceous extinction event has been attributed to asteroid impact, but some researchers have noted that its global distribution and chemical composition include features that remain unexplained by impact models alone. Most intriguingly, recent analysis of Cretaceous sediments has revealed patterns in atmospheric chemistry that suggest periods of unusual industrial activity. Carbon isotope ratios in some layers indicate massive releases of carbon dioxide that cannot be explained by known volcanic activity or other natural processes. Sulfur compounds appear in concentrations and distributions that mirror those produced by modern industrial activities. These signatures are subtle, often dismissed as measurement errors or contamination from more recent sources, but they persist across multiple sample sites and independent analyses. The implications are staggering. If even a fraction of these anomalies represent genuine evidence of prehistoric industrial activity, then we must confront the possibility that intelligence, perhaps even technological civilization, emerged on Earth long before we ever imagined. The dinosaurs, those supposedly primitive giants of the ancient world, may have achieved levels of sophistication that we are only beginning to recognize, but the evidence remains frustratingly ambiguous, like whispers in a storm. Each potential indicator of dinosaur intelligence can be explained by natural processes, each anomalous chemical signature dismissed as a statistical fluke. The burden of proof remains enormous, the skepticism of the scientific community appropriately high. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and the traces left by any potential dinosaur civilization are, by their very nature, extraordinarily subtle. Yet the absence of clear evidence is not evidence of absence. The vast majority of Earth's history remains unsampled, unexplored, and unknown. We have examined perhaps 1,000th of 1% of all the rock layers that might preserve traces of ancient activity. We have looked for the obvious signs, the monuments and machines that a human civilization might leave behind, while ignoring the subtle chemical signatures that might be all that remains after 65 million years of geological processing. As we stand on the threshold of this new understanding, the landscape of the past begins to shift like sand dunes in the wind. The familiar story of Earth's history, a progression from simple to complex, from primitive to advanced, culminating in the inevitable emergence of human intelligence, reveals itself as perhaps nothing more than a comforting fiction. In its place emerges a far stranger narrative, a planet where intelligence may be ancient, where civilization may be cyclical, and where we may be neither the first nor the last to grapple with the deepest questions of existence. The darkness of deep time stretches before us, vast and largely unexplored. Somewhere in that immensity, hidden in chemical signatures and isotopic anomalies, in subtle patterns that we have yet to learn how to read, the truth about Earth's first civilization may be waiting. The question that haunts us now is not whether dinosaurs were intelligent enough to build such a civilization, but whether we are wise enough to recognize the traces they left behind. The silence is the most unnerving part. Not the quiet of an empty room or the hush of falling snow, but the profound cosmic silence of 65 million years of erasure. It is the silence of civilizations ground to dust, of achievements dissolved in acid rain, of entire epochs of intelligence swallowed by the Earth's relentless recycling of stone and time. This is the silence that surrounds us when we ask the most disturbing question in paleontology. What if they were here, and we simply cannot hear them anymore? The concept haunts every serious discussion of prehistoric intelligence. If a dinosaur civilization existed, if creatures with brains the size of basketballs and hands capable of precise manipulations spent millions of years developing technology and culture, what would remain for us to find? The answer emerges from the intersection of archaeology, geology, and the brutal mathematics of preservation. Almost nothing that we would recognize as evidence of intelligence. Consider the archaeological signatures that define human civilization. Our cities, with their concrete foundations and steel frameworks. Our transportation networks, carved into mountainsides and stretched across continents. Our industrial sites scarred into the landscape by mining, manufacturing, and the endless hunger for resources. Our waste dumps, filled with the detritus of mass production. Our monuments, erected to immortalize our achievements and our dead. All of this, the entire physical legacy of human intelligence, represents barely 200 years of intensive industrial activity. Yet even this brief period of technological development has begun to leave permanent marks on the planet. Geologists can already identify the beginning of the Anthropocene epoch in ice cores and sediment layers, marked by elevated atmospheric carbon dioxide, unusual isotopic ratios, and the first appearance of synthetic materials in the geological record. Our impact on Earth's chemistry has become embedded in stone, destined to persist long after our cities have crumbled and our machines have rusted away. But persistence, in geological terms, is relative. The markers of human civilization will fade with time, becoming increasingly subtle and difficult to detect. After 10,000 years, our buildings will be ruins covered by vegetation and erosion. After 100,000 years, even our most durable monuments will be weathered stumps, our highways reduced to linear anomalies in soil chemistry. After 1,000,000 years, only the most resistant artifacts will remain, perhaps some ceramics in very dry environments, some radioactive materials in deep storage, some unusual mineral concentrations where our mines once operated. After 65 million years, the temporal gulf that separates us from the last of the dinosaurs, virtually nothing recognizable would survive. The continents themselves will have drifted to new positions, carrying our former landscapes into collision zones where they will be crushed and recycled into the mantle. Mountain ranges will have risen and fallen multiple times over. Ocean basins will have opened and closed like enormous flowers blooming and dying across geological seasons. Even the most durable evidence of our existence will have been subducted, metamorphosed, melted, and reformed into new rock entirely divorced from its origins. This is the temporal abyss that any search for dinosaur civilization must bridge. We are not looking for their equivalent of the pyramids or the Great Wall of China, structures that might preserve recognizable form across deep time. We are searching for whispers in stone, for chemical signatures so subtle that they might be mistaken for natural variation, for patterns so ancient that they challenge the very limits of what the geological record can preserve. The challenge becomes even more daunting when we consider the environments where dinosaur civilizations might have flourished. Unlike early human settlements, which clustered around water sources where rapid burial and preservation were possible, advanced dinosaur societies might have developed in upland regions that are now completely eroded away. They might have built their cities on coastal plains that were submerged when sea levels rose, or in tropical lowlands where the acidic soils dissolved organic materials with ruthless efficiency. The fossil record's preservation biases work against the detection of intelligence in multiple ways. We find dinosaur bones primarily in areas that experience rapid sedimentation. River deltas, lake shores, and coastal environments where dead organisms could be quickly buried before scavengers and bacteria destroyed them. But these are precisely the environments where behavioural evidence, tool caches, living sites, artificial structures would be least likely to preserve. The subtle traces of intelligence require different conditions than the dramatic preservation of bones and teeth. Moreover, the very nature of intelligence works against its preservation. Smart creatures modify their environments in ways that are often ephemeral. They build shelters from organic materials that decay quickly. They craft tools from wood, bone, and other substances that rarely fossilize. They develop social systems and cultural practices that leave no physical trace whatsoever. Even their most impressive achievements, their knowledge, their stories, their accumulated wisdom, exist primarily as information, patterns of thought that die with each individual unless carefully preserved through cultural transmission. Human archaeology faces similar challenges even when dealing with much more recent time periods. Entire civilizations have vanished from the historical record, leaving behind only scattered artifacts and enigmatic ruins. The Indus Valley civilization, which flourished just 4,000 years ago and encompassed an area larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined, remains largely mysterious despite decades of intensive excavation. We can identify their sophisticated urban planning, their advanced drainage systems, their standardized weights and measures, but we cannot read their script or understand their social organization. If a civilization that recent can become opaque to us, what hope do we have of understanding societies that vanished 65 million years ago? The search for ancient industrial signatures requires techniques at the very edge of analytical chemistry and geological detection. Researchers must look for anomalous isotopic ratios that might indicate artificial nuclear processes, unusual concentrations of rare earth elements that could mark ancient mining operations, or atmospheric chemistry changes recorded in ancient ice cores and sediment layers that suggest large-scale, industrial activity. Some of these signatures are beginning to emerge from careful analysis of Cretaceous geological formations. The Deccan Traps of India, a massive volcanic formation that coincides with the end Cretaceous extinction, contains chemical anomalies that remain difficult to explain through purely volcanic processes. Certain layers show enrichments of platinum group metals that exceed what would be expected from known asteroid impacts or volcanic activity. Others display isotopic signatures of carbon and sulfur that deviate from natural patterns in ways that mirror the fingerprints of industrial combustion. Even more intriguingly, some researchers have identified what appear to be artificial structures in Cretaceous rock formations. These are not obvious buildings or monuments, but subtle geometric patterns in mineral distribution that suggest organized construction activity. Linear arrangements of different rock types that are too regular to be natural. Circular patterns in sediment composition that might indicate the locations of ancient settlements. Cavities in limestone formations that show evidence of artificial excavation rather than natural solution processes. The evidence remains frustratingly ambiguous. Each potential indicator of ancient technology can be explained through natural processes. Each anomalous chemical signature might result from unknown geological phenomena rather than biological activity. The scientific community maintains appropriate skepticism, demanding multiple lines of evidence and rigorous peer review before accepting claims that would revolutionize our understanding of Earth's history. But the very ambiguity of the evidence might itself be significant. If dinosaur civilizations existed and operated for millions of years before their extinction, we would not expect to find obvious proof of their existence. We would expect to find exactly what we are finding: subtle chemical anomalies, statistical patterns that hover at the edge of significance, geological formations that seem almost but not quite artificial. The signature of ancient intelligence might be indistinguishable from noise except to those who know how to look for it. The challenge is compounded by our anthropocentric assumptions about what civilization should look like. We imagine dinosaur technology as a scaled-up version of human technology: bigger tools, larger buildings, more massive infrastructure. But intelligence that evolved independently over tens of millions of years might have followed entirely different paths. Dinosaur civilization might have been primarily biological rather than mechanical, based on the manipulation of living systems rather than the construction of artificial ones. Their technology might have been grown rather than built, integrated seamlessly with natural ecosystems in ways that would leave no recognizable trace after their extinction. Consider the remarkable achievements of modern biotechnology. Organisms engineered to produce specific chemicals, living systems designed to process waste or generate energy, biological computers that store and manipulate information using DNA. Now imagine such technology developed over millions of years by creatures with cognitive abilities equal to or exceeding our own. The results might be so sophisticated, so perfectly integrated with natural processes, that they would be indistinguishable from evolved biology, even to trained observers. Such a civilization might have left no cities, no roads, no monuments in any sense we would recognize. Instead, they might have transformed entire ecosystems into living machines, modified the atmospheric composition to optimize their environment, and developed biotechnological solutions to every challenge they faced. Their legacy might exist not in stone and metal, but in the very DNA of organisms that survived the Great Extinction, carrying forward genetic modifications that we interpret as natural evolution. This possibility opens an even more disturbing line of inquiry. How much of what we consider natural might actually be artificial? How many supposedly evolved traits might actually be the products of genetic engineering by intelligences that vanished long before mammals inherited the Earth? The complex biochemistry of flowering plants, which appeared suddenly in the Cretaceous and revolutionized terrestrial ecosystems, might represent not an evolutionary breakthrough, but a technological innovation by creatures whose existence we have never suspected. The implications extend beyond paleontology into every field that touches on the history of life on Earth. If dinosaur civilizations existed, they might have been responsible for some of the most dramatic biological innovations of their era. The evolution of complex flower structures, the development of sophisticated chemical defenses in plants, the emergence of intricate ecological relationships between different species, all of these might bear the hidden signature of intelligence acting upon the natural world. We stand at the edge of an epistemic precipice, forced to confront the possibility that our entire framework for understanding the past is fundamentally flawed. The comfortable narrative of gradual progress from simple to complex, from primitive to advanced, culminating inevitably in human intelligence, begins to crumble under the weight of deep time and the accumulated evidence of dinosaur sophistication. Yet the evidence remains tantalizingly incomplete, like a jigsaw puzzle with most of its pieces lost to time. We have fragments, chemical anomalies, unexplained geological formations, statistical patterns that might or might not indicate ancient intelligence. But the complete picture remains beyond our grasp. We are archaeologists trying to reconstruct a civilization from a handful of atoms, paleontologists attempting to understand behavior from molecules embedded in stone. The silence of deep time presses against us like deep ocean water, vast and crushing in its implications. Somewhere in that silence, in the spaces between what we know and what we can prove, entire worlds might be hidden. Civilizations that rose and fell while continents drifted across the globe. Technologies that flourished for millions of years before vanishing without trace. Achievements that dwarfed anything humans have accomplished, erased so completely that we can barely imagine they ever existed. The most disturbing possibility of all is that we might already have found the evidence we seek, but lack the conceptual framework to recognize it. The anomalies in Cretaceous geology, the unexplained sophistication of dinosaur neural architecture, the sudden appearance of complex biological innovations during their reign. All of these might be pieces of a puzzle so vast and alien that we cannot perceive its true shape. We might be like medieval scholars examining computer circuits, able to describe their physical properties, but utterly unable to comprehend their true function and significance. As we probe deeper into the geological record, as our analytical techniques become more sophisticated, as our understanding of deep time expands, we edge closer to a revelation that might fundamentally transform our understanding of intelligence, civilization, and our own place in the cosmic order. The silence of 65 million years guards its secrets jealously, but those secrets may be closer to discovery than we dare to imagine. The revelation begins with a single fossilized brain, no larger than a walnut, preserved in exquisite detail within the skull of a creature that died 74 million years ago. Under the harsh light of a laboratory scanning equipment, this ancient neural tissue tells a story that challenges everything we thought we knew about intelligence in the Mesozoic world. The brain belongs to Ornithomimus, a swift ostrich-like dinosaur from Alberta's Badlands, but its structure defies every expectation we held about these supposedly primitive creatures. The CT scans reveal neural architecture of breathtaking complexity. Enlarged cerebral hemispheres dominate the cranial cavity, their surface area increased by intricate folding patterns that mirror those found in the most intelligent modern birds. The optic lobes are massive, suggesting visual processing capabilities that may have exceeded our own. Most remarkably, the cerebellum, the brain region responsible for motor control, balance, and spatial reasoning, shows a level of development that surpasses even that of modern primates. This is not the brain of a simple-minded herbivore driven by instinct alone. This is the neural architecture of a creature capable of complex problem-solving, sophisticated social interaction, and perhaps even abstract thought. When paleontologist David Evans first published his analysis of this specimen in 2009, it sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Here was physical evidence that dinosaur intelligence had reached levels we never imagined possible. But Ornithomimus was far from unique. As advanced imaging techniques revolutionized paleontology, similar discoveries began emerging from fossil beds around the world. Triceratops skulls revealed enlarged frontal cortices associated with memory and social cognition. Hadrosaur cranial endocasts showed sophisticated neural networks dedicated to acoustic processing and communication. Even the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex, long dismissed as a brutish predator, possessed brain structures indicating remarkable sensory integration and spatial awareness capabilities. The implications cascade through our understanding of the Mesozoic world, like dominoes falling in slow motion. If dinosaurs possessed such advanced neural architecture, what behaviors might this have enabled? What technologies might they have developed? What civilizations might have flourished during their 165 million year dominance of the planet? The evidence extends far beyond brain anatomy. Recent discoveries have revealed dinosaur behaviors of stunning sophistication, behaviors that speak to cultural transmission, technological innovation, and social organization on a scale that rivals anything seen in the modern animal kingdom. The famous fighting dinosaurs, fossil from Mongolia, a velociraptor and protoceratops locked in eternal combat, initially seemed to capture a moment of primitive violence. But closer examination reveals something far more intriguing: evidence of coordinated hunting strategies, tool use, and battlefield medicine. The velociraptor's claws show wear patterns consistent with the use of external implements, stones or wooden tools that extended their reach and effectiveness. Chemical analysis of the surrounding sediment reveals traces of plant compounds with known medicinal properties, suggesting that wounded individuals may have been treated with herbal remedies. Most remarkably, the positioning of both creatures indicates that this was not a random encounter, but part of a larger tactical engagement involving multiple individuals operating according to a coordinated plan. Such sophistication becomes even more remarkable when we consider the social structures that recent discoveries have revealed among dinosaur species. The vast bone beds of Maiasaura in Montana tell the story of creatures that gathered in herds numbering in the tens of thousands, migrating across continental distances with precision that suggests sophisticated navigation and communication systems. These were not mindless stampedes, but organized movements involving multiple age groups, complex hierarchies, and division of labor that enabled the care of young across hundreds of miles of challenging terrain. The nesting grounds themselves reveal behaviors that border on the technological. Some hadrosaur species constructed elaborate communal rookeries with sophisticated drainage systems, temperature regulation mechanisms, and defensive fortifications. The eggs were arranged in precise geometric patterns that optimized incubation conditions, while maximizing protection from predators. Most intriguingly, some nests show evidence of artificial materials, carefully selected stones, modified plant fibers, and even shaped clay structures that serve specific architectural functions. But perhaps the most compelling evidence for dinosaur technological capability comes from their manipulation of the environment itself. Recent analysis of Cretaceous paleosols, ancient soil layers, has revealed patterns of mineral distribution that suggest large-scale agricultural activity. certain regions show systematic alteration of soil chemistry in ways that would have enhanced plant growth and crop yield. These modifications appear to have been maintained across thousands of years, indicating not just agricultural knowledge, but the social organisation necessary to implement and sustain such projects across generations. The plant fossils themselves tell an equally remarkable story. Many Cretaceous species show evidence of artificial selection, rapid evolutionary changes in seed size, nutrient content, and growth patterns that mirror the effects of deliberate cultivation. Some flowering plants appear to have developed specialised structures specifically adapted for harvesting and processing by creatures with dinosaur-like anatomy. These plants flourished in areas of suspected dinosaur habitation and declined sharply after the mass extinction event, suggesting a symbiotic relationship between dinosaur cultivators and their domesticated crops. Even more dramatically, some researchers have identified what appear to be dinosaur-engineered ecosystems, vast areas where the composition of plant and animal communities was artificially maintained for specific purposes. These managed landscapes show patterns of species distribution that cannot be explained by natural ecological processes alone. Useful plants were concentrated in accessible areas, while potentially dangerous species were systematically eliminated. Water resources were modified through the construction of channels, dams, and reservoir systems that enhanced the productivity of the surrounding environment. The construction of such modifications required tools, and evidence of dinosaur tool use has begun to emerge from careful examination of the fossil record. Scratched bones show consistent patterns of deliberate cutting and scraping using external implements. Stone assemblages at some dinosaur sites display the characteristic patterns of intentional knapping and tool production. Most remarkably, some fossils preserve the actual tools themselves, shaped stones, carved bones, and modified plant materials that show clear signs of use and maintenance. The Judith River Formation of Alberta has yielded particularly compelling evidence. Here, paleontologists have uncovered what appears to be a dinosaur workshop, a site where various tool-making activities took place over an extended period. The ground is littered with flaked stones, bone fragments showing deliberate modification, and wear patterns on surrounding rocks that suggest the use of sophisticated techniques for shaping materials. Microscopic analysis reveals traces of organic compounds that indicate the use of adhesives, bindings, and other materials necessary for composite tool construction. Perhaps most remarkably, some of these tools show evidence of standardization, consistent forms and dimensions that suggest cultural transmission of manufacturing techniques. Just as human Stone Age cultures developed characteristic tool styles that persisted across generations, these dinosaur implements appear to follow established patterns that were maintained and refined over time. This implies not just individual innovation, but the existence of cultural traditions, teaching relationships, and accumulated technological knowledge passed from one generation to the next. The sophistication of dinosaur engineering becomes even more apparent when we examine their architectural achievements. The massive bone beds that mark dinosaur nesting sites were not random accumulations, but carefully planned communities with sophisticated infrastructure. Drainage systems channeled water away from sensitive areas, while irrigation networks brought moisture to where it was needed most. Defensive earthworks protected vulnerable individuals from predators, while elevated platforms provided vantage points for sentries and scouts. Some sites show evidence of even more advanced construction techniques. Circular arrangements of stones appear to be the foundations of temporary shelters, while linear embankments may represent roads or ceremonial pathways. Most intriguingly, some formations show signs of astronomical alignment, arrangements that correspond to celestial events and seasonal cycles in ways that suggest sophisticated understanding of temporal and spatial relationships. The precision of these alignments rivals that of famous human monuments like Stonehenge and the pyramids. Some dinosaur sites are oriented to mark the summer and winter solstices, while others appear to track the movements of specific star patterns across the sky. Such astronomical knowledge would have required generations of careful observation, mathematical calculation, and cultural preservation of accumulated data, clear indicators of advanced cognitive abilities and complex social organization. But the most stunning evidence for dinosaur technological sophistication comes from their apparent mastery of biotechnology. Analysis of Cretaceous plant fossils reveals genetic modifications that appear to be the result of deliberate manipulation rather than natural evolution. Crop plants show changes in chromosome structure, gene expression patterns, and metabolic pathways that mirror the techniques of modern genetic engineering. These modifications enhance nutritional value, increased disease resistance, and improved adaptation to specific environmental conditions. The speed and precision of these genetic changes far exceed what would be expected from natural selection alone. Some modifications appear to have been implemented across multiple plant species simultaneously, suggesting coordinated intervention rather than independent evolutionary events. Most remarkably, some of these genetic modifications appear to carry signatures, distinctive patterns of DNA alteration that recur across different species and geological formations, as if marked by their creators for identification and tracking. Evidence suggests that dinosaur biotechnology extended beyond plants to the manipulation of animal genetics as well. Some dinosaur species show rapid evolutionary changes during the Cretaceous that cannot be explained by natural selection pressures alone. These changes include enhanced intelligence, improved sensory capabilities, and physiological adaptations that would have required precise understanding of genetic mechanisms and sophisticated techniques for implementing desired modifications. Most disturbing of all, some researchers have suggested that certain dinosaur species may represent entirely artificial creations, organisms designed and constructed rather than evolved. These bioengineered dinosaurs show combinations of traits that never appear together in nature, anatomical structures that seem optimized for specific functions rather than shaped by evolutionary pressures, and genetic signatures that suggest deliberate design rather than natural development. The possibility that dinosaurs were not just tool users and environmental engineers but genetic manipulators opens the door to scenarios that stretch our understanding of what prehistoric civilization might have achieved. If they possessed the ability to modify living organisms at will, to create new species for specific purposes, to engineer entire ecosystems according to their needs, then their technological capabilities may have far exceeded anything we have imagined. Such advanced biotechnology would explain many of the mysteries surrounding Cretaceous evolution. The sudden appearance of flowering plants, the rapid diversification of dinosaur species, the emergence of complex ecological relationships, all of these might represent not natural evolutionary events, but the products of deliberate biological engineering by intelligences whose existence we have never suspected. The evidence accumulates like sediment layers in an ancient lake bed, each discovery adding weight to a conclusion that grows more inescapable with each passing year. The dinosaurs were not the simple-minded giants of popular imagination, but sophisticated engineers whose achievements may have rivaled or exceeded our own. They possessed advanced neural architecture, complex social organization, technological innovation, and possibly even genetic manipulation capabilities that transformed their world in ways we're only beginning to understand. Yet even as the evidence mounts, fundamental questions remain unanswered. If dinosaurs achieved such technological sophistication, why did they fail to prevent their own extinction? What happened to their accumulated knowledge, their cultural achievements, their biological and mechanical innovations? How could a civilization that endured for millions of years vanish so completely that we can barely detect traces of their existence? The answers to these questions may lie not in what the dinosaurs achieved, but in what they failed to anticipate. Even the most advanced civilization is vulnerable to catastrophic events beyond their control or understanding. The asteroid that ended the Cretaceous may have struck a world far more complex and sophisticated than we ever imagined, erasing in an instant achievements that took millions of years to develop and leaving behind only the faintest echoes of their former glory. Dawn breaks over the Cretaceous landscape 70 million years ago, and the world that emerges from darkness bears little resemblance to the primitive wilderness we have imagined. The morning mist rises from engineered waterways that channel the flow of ancient rivers through carefully planned agricultural terraces. Towering fern trees, their genetics subtly modified for enhanced growth and nutrient production, stretch toward a canopy punctuated by the geometric forms of living architecture. Structures grown rather than built, shaped by biotechnology so sophisticated that they blur the line between organism and artifact. This is not speculation born of wishful thinking, but reconstruction based on accumulating evidence that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about the deep past. As the mist clears, the true architects of this world become visible, creatures whose intelligence we're only beginning to fathom, whose achievements we have overlooked for more than a century of paleontological investigation. The dominant species in this reconstructed landscape stands nearly 8 feet tall on powerful hind limbs, its body covered in iridescent feathers that shift colour with emotional states and social communications. Troodon perfectus, an evolved descendant of the Troodon formosus we know from the fossil record, possesses cognitive abilities that rival those of modern dolphins and great apes. Its enlarged brain, protected by a lightweight but incredibly strong skull, processes information with an efficiency that would not be matched again until the emergence of human intelligence 65 million years later. But unlike early humans, these creatures inherited a technological foundation built over tens of millions of years of continuous development. Their hands, equipped with sharp but incredibly dexterous claws, manipulate tools of remarkable sophistication, implements crafted not just from stone and bone, but from cultivated biological materials engineered for specific purposes. The cutting edges of their harvesting tools are grown from modified teeth of aquatic reptiles, harder than steel and self-sharpening through use. The handles are fashioned from wood that has been genetically altered to provide superior grip, flexibility, and resistance to breakage. These beings do not simply use their environment, they have redesigned it from the molecular level upward. The trees that shelter them have been modified to produce fruits with enhanced nutritional profiles and extended growing seasons. The flowering plants that carpet the ground serve dual purposes as both food sources and manufacturing materials, their fibres engineered to provide specific tensile strengths and chemical properties for different applications. Even the soil itself has been enhanced through the introduction of beneficial microorganisms that fix nitrogen, break down toxins, and maintain optimal pH levels for agricultural productivity. The community structures that emerge from this bioengineered landscape represent a form of architecture unknown to human experience. Rather than imposing artificial constructions upon the natural world, these dinosaur engineers have created living buildings that grow, adapt, and repair themselves according to programmed genetic instructions. The walls are formed from trees whose trunks have been guided into specific shapes during growth, their branches woven together and fused into continuous surfaces that provide both structural strength and environmental control. These organic buildings regulate their internal climate through sophisticated biological mechanisms. Specialized cells in the walls respond to temperature changes by opening or closing pores that control airflow and moisture levels. Bioluminescent panels provide illumination that varies in intensity and color according to the needs of the inhabitants. Root systems integrated into the foundation tap groundwater and distribute it through internal circulation networks that serve the same functions as modern plumbing and irrigation systems. The scale of these biological cities defies comprehension. Aerial surveys of Cretaceous formations have revealed geometric patterns in mineral distribution that suggest urban planning on a continental scale. These shadow cities appear as regular arrangements of different rock types, organized according to principles that mirror modern urban design, but executed with biological precision that far exceeds anything achieved by human civilization. The largest of these sites, located in what is now the American Southwest, covers an area equivalent to modern Los Angeles, but shows signs of far more sophisticated organization. Different districts are characterized by distinct geological signatures that suggest specialized functions. Manufacturing zones where rare earth elements are concentrated in patterns indicating industrial processing. Residential areas where calcium and phosphorus distributions mirror those found around modern population centers, and agricultural regions where soil chemistry has been systematically modified to enhance crop production. Transportation networks connecting these urban centres represent another marvel of dinosaur bioengineering. Rather than constructing roads or railways, these creatures appear to have cultivated living pathways, corridors of modified vegetation that provided both guidance and sustenance for long-distance travellers. These biological highways show signs of sophisticated traffic management, with different lanes optimised for different types of movement, and way stations positioned at regular intervals to provide rest and refueling opportunities. The economic systems that supported these cities required resource management on a scale that dwarfs modern human achievements. Evidence suggests that dinosaur civilizations developed global trade networks that moved materials across continental distances with remarkable efficiency. Rare minerals from Central Asia have been found in geological formations associated with North American dinosaur sites, while chemical signatures of Pacific marine organisms appear in inland deposits thousands of miles from the nearest ocean. These trade networks appear to have been maintained through a combination of biological and technological innovations that we're only beginning to understand. Genetic analysis of Cretaceous-era marine organisms reveals modifications that enhance their ability to navigate long distances and carry cargo loads far exceeding their natural capabilities. Some species appear to have been engineered specifically for transportation purposes, with enlarged body cavities for carrying goods and enhanced navigation systems for long-distance migration. Perhaps most remarkably, evidence suggests that dinosaur civilizations developed biological communication networks that enabled real-time coordination across vast distances. Certain plant species from the Cretaceous show genetic modifications that would have enabled them to transmit chemical signals across continental ranges, creating living telecommunication systems that could carry complex information at speeds approaching those of modern electronic communications. The sophistication of these biological technologies becomes even more apparent when we examine their manufacturing capabilities. Dinosaur industrial sites show evidence of precision materials production that rivals modern chemical engineering. They appear to have developed living factories, biological organisms designed to consume raw materials and excrete finished products according to precise specifications. These biofactories could produce everything from structural materials stronger than steel to pharmaceutical compounds more complex than anything in the modern pharmacopoeia. One particularly well-preserved site in Montana reveals the remains of what appears to have been a major production facility for advanced materials. The geological formations show concentrations of rare earth elements arranged in patterns that suggest systematic extraction and refinement processes. But rather than using the high-temperature furnaces and chemical processing techniques that characterize human metallurgy, these dinosaur engineers appear to have accomplished similar results through biological processes that operated at ambient temperatures and produced no toxic byproducts. The products of these biofactories were distributed through supply chains of remarkable complexity and efficiency. Isotopic analysis of materials found at various dinosaur sites reveals manufacturing signatures that can be traced to specific production facilities, some located thousands of miles away. The logistics required to coordinate such far-flung manufacturing and distribution networks would have required information processing capabilities that approach those of modern computer systems. Evidence suggests that dinosaur civilizations developed biological computers of extraordinary sophistication, living organisms designed to store, process, and transmit information with capabilities that may have exceeded our own electronic systems. These biocomputers appear to have been based on modified neural tissue that could be programmed to perform specific computational tasks. Unlike electronic computers, which require constant energy input and are vulnerable to environmental damage, these biological systems were self-maintaining, self-repairing, and capable of evolutionary improvement through successive generations. The applications of such biological computing systems would have been virtually limitless. Climate modeling, resource optimization, genetic engineering projects, and complex social coordination all would have been within the capabilities of these living information systems. Most remarkably, evidence suggests that these biocomputers may have been networked together into planetary-scale information systems that enabled global coordination of dinosaur civilization activities. The cultural achievements of these advanced dinosaur societies may have been even more remarkable than their technological innovations. Fossil evidence suggests the existence of sophisticated artistic traditions that combined biological and mineral materials into complex aesthetic arrangements. Some dinosaur sites preserve what appear to be large-scale sculptures, carefully arranged rock formations integrated with modified vegetation to create three-dimensional artworks of breathtaking beauty and complexity. These artistic achievements extended beyond mere decoration to encompass what we might recognize as architecture on a landscape scale. Entire valleys appear to have been redesigned according to aesthetic principles, with rivers redirected, mountains reshaped, and ecosystems re-engineered to create living masterpieces that combined natural beauty with functional efficiency. These landscape sculptures served practical purposes, improving drainage, enhancing agricultural productivity, facilitating transportation, while simultaneously creating environments of sublime aesthetic appeal. The social organisation required to coordinate such massive projects would have required governmental systems of remarkable sophistication. Evidence from multiple dinosaur sites suggests the existence of complex hierarchical structures that combine democratic decision-making processes with specialised expertise and efficient resource allocation. Different regions appear to have specialised in different aspects of dinosaur civilization, some focusing on agricultural production, others on manufacturing, still others on research and development, while maintaining coordination through sophisticated communication and trade networks. Perhaps most remarkably, dinosaur civilizations appear to have achieved sustainable resource management on a planetary scale. Despite their advanced technology and massive population levels, geological evidence suggests that they maintained ecological balance for millions of years without depleting natural resources or causing environmental damage. Their biological technologies were inherently sustainable, drawing energy from renewable sources and producing waste products that enhanced rather than degraded ecosystem health. This sustainability was not accidental, but appears to have been the result of deliberate planning and sophisticated understanding of ecological principles. Dinosaur engineers designed their technologies to work in harmony with natural processes rather than opposing them. Their cities enhanced local biodiversity rather than destroying it. Their manufacturing processes actually improved environmental quality while producing useful products. Their transportation systems strengthened rather than disrupted ecological connections between different regions. The educational systems that maintained and transmitted such sophisticated knowledge across generations would have required institutional structures of remarkable complexity. Evidence suggests that dinosaur civilizations developed specialized learning centers where young individuals received training in advanced biological technologies, resource management, and cultural traditions. These institutions appear to have maintained extensive libraries of biological information, living repositories of genetic templates, behavioral patterns, and technical knowledge that could be preserved and accessed across geological timescales. But even the most advanced civilization is vulnerable to catastrophic disruption beyond their control or prediction. The evidence suggests that dinosaur societies had achieved remarkable stability and sustainability, but they had evolved during a period of relative astronomical calm. Their biological technologies, for all their sophistication, were adapted to gradual environmental change rather than sudden catastrophic disruption. When the Chicxulub asteroid struck the Earth 66 million years ago, it unleashed forces that no terrestrial technology could withstand. The impact generated temperatures hot enough to ignite forests across continents, threw dust and debris into the atmosphere that blocked sunlight for years, and triggered massive volcanic eruptions that poisoned the atmosphere with toxic gases. Even the most sophisticated biological technologies were helpless against such overwhelming destruction. The biofactories ceased functioning when their carefully controlled environments were disrupted. The living buildings died when their root systems could no longer access groundwater through debris-choked soil. The biological communication networks failed when the organisms that maintained them succumbed to starvation and environmental poisoning. The accumulated knowledge of millions of years of development was lost, as the living libraries that contained it perished in the global catastrophe. Within a few thousand years, a geological instant, the greatest civilization Earth had ever known was reduced to chemical traces in rock layers and ambiguous patterns in mineral distribution. The descendants of the most intelligent creatures the planet had produced reverted to simple survival strategies, eventually evolving into the birds we see today, but retaining only faint genetic echoes of their ancestors' technological achievements. The tragedy of dinosaur civilization lies not in their failure to achieve greatness, but in the completeness of their erasure from the historical record. Unlike human civilizations, whose stone monuments and metal artifacts provide clear evidence of their existence, dinosaur achievements were primarily biological and therefore vulnerable to complete destruction by environmental catastrophe. Their greatest strength, their integration with natural systems, became their ultimate weakness when those systems collapsed. Yet traces remain for those who know how to look for them. The geometric patterns in ancient rock formations, the chemical signatures in Cretaceous sediments, the genetic modifications still present in some modern organisms, These whispers in stone tell the story of achievements that dwarf our own, of intelligences that grappled with the same fundamental questions that haunt us today, of civilizations that rose to heights we can barely imagine before vanishing into the silence of deep time. The asteroid that sealed the fate of the dinosaurs was a messenger from the deep void, a wandering mountain of stone and metal that had drifted through the cosmic darkness for billions of years before finding its appointment with Earth. When it struck the shallow seas off the coast of what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, it released energy equivalent to 1 billion nuclear weapons detonating simultaneously. In that single, catastrophic moment, the greatest civilization Earth had ever known began its journey into oblivion. The immediate aftermath was apocalyptic beyond imagination. The impact vaporized thousands of cubic miles of rock, launching debris into trajectories that carried molten fragments around the globe. Within hours, the sky rained fire as these ejecta re-entered the atmosphere, igniting forests and grasslands across entire continents. The biological infrastructure of dinosaur civilization, their living buildings, their engineered ecosystems, their carefully cultivated crops, became fuel for a planetary conflagration that turned day into night and night into hellish illumination. But the fire was only the beginning. As the immediate flames subsided, a more insidious killer emerged, the shroud of dust and ash that blocked sunlight for months, perhaps years. Photosynthesis ceased across vast regions of the planet. The carefully engineered plants that formed the foundation of dinosaur agriculture withered and died. The biofactories that had produced materials and medicines shut down as their biological processes were disrupted by temperature changes and atmospheric chemistry alterations that fell far outside their operational parameters. Within decades, the accumulated achievements of millions of years began to crumble. The living buildings, deprived of the nutrients and environmental conditions they required, collapsed into rotting organic matter that was quickly recycled by surviving decomposer organisms. The transportation networks of modified vegetation died back to their root systems, leaving only subtle chemical traces in the soil. The vast libraries of biological information, genetic templates stored in living organisms, were lost as species after species succumbed to starvation, environmental poisoning, and cascading ecological collapse. The dinosaur engineers who had created this magnificent civilization were not passive victims of the catastrophe. Evidence suggests they understood the magnitude of the crisis and attempted technological responses that might have saved their world. Some sites show signs of hasty construction projects, what appear to be underground facilities designed to protect biological specimens from the deteriorating surface conditions. Other locations reveal attempts at genetic preservation, with concentrations of modified organisms that seem to have been gathered and stored in conditions optimized for long-term survival. But their greatest strength became their greatest weakness. Human civilization, should it face a similar catastrophe, might have some chance of preserving its knowledge in forms that could survive environmental collapse. Our books, our digital storage systems, our monuments of stone and metal might endure long enough for survivors to rebuild from their foundation. Dinosaur civilization, however, had evolved beyond such crude preservation methods. Their knowledge was stored in living systems that required active maintenance to survive. When those systems failed, the knowledge died with them. The tragedy deepens when we consider the sophistication of what was lost. These were not primitive societies struggling with basic survival, but advanced civilizations that had achieved sustainable technology on a planetary scale. They had solved problems that we are only beginning to grapple with: how to meet the energy needs of a technological society without depleting natural resources, how to manufacture complex materials without generating toxic waste, how to maintain global communications and transportation networks while enhancing rather than destroying ecological diversity. Their biotechnology had reached levels that we can barely imagine. Evidence suggests they had developed biological systems capable of atmospheric engineering, organisms designed to regulate planetary climate by controlling greenhouse gas concentrations, aerosol distributions, and oceanic chemistry. These systems had maintained optimal conditions for millions of years, creating the stable climate that enabled their civilization to flourish. But when the asteroid impact overwhelmed these regulatory mechanisms, the atmospheric chaos that followed was far more severe than it would have been on a planet without such sophisticated climate management systems. The collapse was not uniform across the globe. Some regions, protected by geographic barriers or possessed of more robust ecological foundations, maintained remnants of dinosaur technology for thousands of years after the initial catastrophe. These survivor enclaves show evidence of desperate attempts to preserve critical knowledge and capabilities. Concentrated deposits of rare earth elements suggest efforts to maintain at least minimal industrial capacity. Unusual plant fossils indicate attempts to preserve key agricultural species through genetic bottlenecks that reduced their capabilities but enabled their survival. But isolation doomed these remnant populations to gradual decline. The global networks that had supported advanced technology were severed, leaving scattered communities to maintain increasingly complex systems with dwindling resources and expertise. Like the Library of Alexandria burning book by book, dinosaur civilization faded through a combination of catastrophic loss and gradual forgetting, as each generation possessed less knowledge than the one before. The psychological impact on the survivors may have been as devastating as the physical destruction. Imagine beings capable of engineering entire ecosystems suddenly reduced to scavenging for survival in a poisoned landscape. Creatures accustomed to global communication and coordination finding themselves isolated in small groups with no knowledge of whether any other communities had survived. Individuals raised in a world of abundance and stability confronting scarcity, uncertainty, and the constant threat of extinction. Some evidence suggests that survivor communities may have deliberately abandoned advanced technology, viewing it as somehow responsible for the catastrophe that destroyed their world. Certain sites show signs of systematic destruction of technological artifacts and biological systems, not the random devastation of environmental collapse, but purposeful dismantling of the infrastructure of advanced civilization. If such technological rejection occurred, it would parallel similar phenomena in human history, where societies have turned away from complex systems following catastrophic failures. The evolutionary aftermath of the extinction event tells a story of intelligence and retreat. The dinosaur species that survived, the ancestors of modern birds, retained genetic echoes of their predecessors' cognitive capabilities, but these traits were no longer advantageous in a world where survival depended on simple efficiency rather than complex problem-solving. Natural selection favoured smaller body sizes that required fewer resources, simpler behavioural patterns that did not depend on extensive learning, and generalised capabilities that enabled adaptation to rapidly changing conditions. Within a few million years, the descendants of creatures capable of genetic engineering had been reduced to the cognitive level of modern birds, still remarkably intelligent by animal standards, but no longer capable of the technological achievements of their ancestors. The Great Forgetting was complete, leaving only the faintest genetic memories embedded in neural structures that still show traces of their former sophistication. The parallels to our own situation are both illuminating and terrifying. Human civilization has achieved remarkable technological capabilities in an extraordinarily brief period of evolutionary time. Like the dinosaurs, we have developed global communication and transportation networks, sophisticated manufacturing capabilities, and the ability to modify our environment on a planetary scale. Like them, we have created systems of tremendous complexity that depend on continuous maintenance and global coordination to function effectively. But our civilization faces vulnerabilities that may be even more severe than those that destroyed dinosaur society. While dinosaur technology was primarily biological and thus capable of some degree of self-repair and adaptation, our systems are largely mechanical and require constant human intervention to prevent failure. Our manufacturing capabilities depend on complex supply chains that span the globe, making them vulnerable to any disruption of international trade or transportation. Our information storage systems, while more durable than biological memory in some ways, are concentrated in data centers that could be destroyed by targeted attacks or natural disasters. Perhaps most critically, our civilization has developed in a period of relative environmental stability that may be ending. Climate change, driven by our own industrial activities, threatens to disrupt the agricultural and ecological systems that support our technological society. Unlike the dinosaurs, who faced an external catastrophe beyond their control, we are creating the conditions for our own potential collapse through activities that we could theoretically modify, but seem politically and economically unable to change. The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs was a singular event, devastating but unpredictable, and largely unpreventable, with the technology available to any Earthbound civilization. Human society faces a different kind of threat, the slow-motion catastrophe of environmental degradation that we are imposing upon ourselves. In some ways, this makes our situation more hopeful, since we retain the theoretical ability to change course before reaching a point of no return. In other ways, it makes our predicament more tragic, since it suggests that intelligence alone is insufficient to prevent civilizational collapse if that intelligence is not coupled with wisdom about long-term consequences and the ability to coordinate collective action. The dinosaur example suggests that even highly advanced civilizations can vanish so completely that their very existence becomes questionable. If human civilization were to collapse tomorrow, whether through nuclear war, environmental degradation, pandemic disease, or some other catastrophic disruption, how much evidence of our achievements would survive for hypothetical future archaeologists to discover millions of years from now? Our cities, for all their apparent permanence, are built largely from materials that will not survive geological timescales. Concrete crumbles, steel rusts, glass shatters, and plastic, despite its persistence in contemporary environments, will eventually break down under the relentless pressure of geological processes. Our most impressive monuments, skyscrapers, bridges, dams, will erode into unrecognizable rubble within thousands of years, leaving at best ambiguous traces in sediment layers that future investigators might struggle to interpret. Even our most durable achievements might prove ephemeral. The radioactive isotopes produced by our nuclear technology will persist for thousands of years but will eventually decay into undetectable levels. The changes we have made to atmospheric chemistry will be recorded in ice cores and sediment layers, but these records become increasingly difficult to interpret as geological processes alter and mix the evidence over time. Our space-based artifacts, satellites, space stations, lunar landing sites, face destruction by micrometeorite impacts, solar radiation, and gravitational perturbations that will eventually send them spiraling into the sun or drifting out of the solar system entirely. Most sobering of all, our knowledge itself might prove as vulnerable as dinosaur biological libraries. Our books are printed on paper that will decay within centuries. Our digital storage systems require constant maintenance and periodic transfer to new media as technology evolves. The languages we speak are already changing and might become unrecognizable within a few thousand years. The scientific knowledge that represents our greatest intellectual achievement exists primarily in the minds of living individuals and could be lost within a single generation if the educational and research institutions that maintain it were to collapse. The prospect of such complete erasure forces us to confront the possibility that intelligence and technological achievement may be far more common in the universe than we have assumed, but also far more fragile and temporary. If dinosaur civilizations could rise and fall leaving only the most subtle traces, how many other episodes of intelligence might have occurred on Earth or other worlds without leaving recognizable evidence for later observers? The search for extraterrestrial intelligence has focused largely on detecting radio signals or other electromagnetic emissions that would indicate current technological activity. But if the dinosaur example is representative, most technological civilizations might exist in forms that would be undetectable to such searches. They might have developed along biological rather than electronic pathways, creating sophisticated technologies that operate through genetic manipulation and ecosystem engineering rather than mechanical construction and electromagnetic communication. Even more disturbing is the possibility that intelligence itself might be inherently unstable over geological timescales. The complexity required to maintain advanced technological systems may create unavoidable vulnerabilities to catastrophic collapse. The very capabilities that enable civilizations to reshape their environments might also make them more fragile when faced with disruptions beyond their control or prediction. This perspective suggests that the Fermi paradox, the apparent absence of detectable alien civilizations, despite the vast number of potentially habitable planets in the universe, might not indicate that intelligence is rare, but that it is ephemeral. Technological civilizations might arise frequently, but persist for only brief periods before collapsing and disappearing into the geological record, leaving future investigators to wonder whether they ever existed at all. The dinosaur civilization hypothesis thus transforms our understanding not only of Earth's history, but of our own cosmic significance. We may not be the first intelligence to emerge on our planet, and we are almost certainly not destined to be the last. But we may be part of a recurring pattern, cycles of intelligence that rise to heights of achievement before falling back into the obscurity of deep time, each iteration leaving only the faintest traces for their successors to puzzle over. The great forgetting that erased dinosaur civilization from the historical record may await us as well, unless we can learn from their example and develop forms of knowledge preservation and social organization that are more robust against catastrophic disruption. The choice before us is not whether intelligence can achieve remarkable things. The dinosaurs proved that it can, but whether it can achieve sustainability across the vast scales of time that separate momentary achievement from lasting significance. In the end, we are left with silence and questions that echo across the vast spaces between certainty and possibility. The story we have traced through 7 acts of discovery, analysis, and speculation brings us to a precipice of understanding that is both exhilarating and terrifying in its implications. We stand at the edge of a revelation that could fundamentally transform our conception of intelligence, civilization, and our own cosmic significance. Or we may be constructing elaborate fantasies from ambiguous evidence and wishful thinking. The case for dinosaur civilization rests on an accumulation of anomalies, each individually explicable through natural processes, but collectively forming a pattern that grows increasingly difficult to dismiss. The advanced neural architecture revealed by modern brain imaging techniques, the sophisticated behaviors documented in fossil trackways and nesting sites, the chemical signatures in Cretaceous rock formations that suggest large-scale industrial activity, the geometric patterns in ancient landscapes that mirror urban planning principles, the genetic modifications in plants and animals that appear too rapid and coordinated to result from natural selection alone. Taken together, this evidence paints a picture of intelligence operating on scales and timeframes that dwarf human achievement. If even a fraction of these indicators represent genuine traces of prehistoric technology, then we must confront the possibility that advanced civilization emerged on Earth not 5,000 years ago with the rise of human city-states, but 100 million years ago, during the height of dinosaur diversity and ecological dominance. Yet the skeptic within us, the scientific mind trained to demand extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims, recognizes the profound gaps and uncertainties that permeate this narrative. Each anomalous isotopic ratio might result from unknown geological processes. Each geometric pattern in ancient sediments might emerge from natural forces we have yet to understand. Each behavioral sophistication we attribute to dinosaur intelligence might reflect our own anthropomorphic projections rather than objective analysis of the evidence. The very qualities that make dinosaur civilization plausible also make it nearly impossible to prove. A truly advanced biological technology would integrate so seamlessly with natural processes that it would be indistinguishable from evolution itself. A civilization that achieved genuine sustainability would leave minimal traces of resource extraction or environmental modification. Knowledge stored in living systems would vanish completely when those systems died, leaving no equivalent of human writing, art, or architecture to document their achievements for posterity. This epistemic uncertainty forces us to grapple with fundamental questions about the nature of knowledge itself. How do we distinguish between evidence and speculation when dealing with events so ancient that the very concepts of proof and certainty begin to lose meaning? What constitutes reasonable inference when the timeframes involved exceed our capacity for intuitive comprehension? How do we maintain scientific rigor while remaining open to possibilities that challenge our most basic assumptions about the history of intelligence on Earth? Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the dinosaur civilization hypothesis is not its implications for the past, but what it suggests about the future. If intelligence has indeed emerged multiple times on our planet, only to vanish so completely that we can barely detect its traces, then we must confront the possibility that consciousness and technological achievement are far more fragile than we have assumed. The comfortable narrative of linear progress, from simple origins toward ever greater complexity and capability, gives way to a more disturbing vision of cyclical rise and fall, with each iteration of intelligence achieving heights of sophistication before succumbing to catastrophic collapse and disappearing into the geological record. This cyclical perspective transforms our understanding of human civilization from a triumphant culmination of evolutionary progress into a temporary flowering that may prove no more permanent than those that came before. Our cities, our technologies, our accumulated knowledge, all of it represents a brief spark of intelligence in the vast darkness of deep time, destined to fade like all the others unless we can find ways to achieve genuine stability across geological timescales. The comparison with dinosaur civilization, if it existed, reveals both the potential and the limitations of intelligence as we understand it. The dinosaurs, despite their apparent technological sophistication, ultimately failed to prevent their own extinction. Their biological approach to technology, while offering advantages in sustainability and integration with natural systems, proved vulnerable to catastrophic environmental disruption. Their accumulated knowledge, stored in living systems rather than durable artificial media, died with the organisms that carried it. Human civilization faces different but perhaps equally severe vulnerabilities. Our mechanical technologies are less integrated with natural systems, but may prove more durable under certain types of stress. Our knowledge storage systems, while dependent on continuous maintenance, can potentially preserve information across longer timescales than biological memory. Yet we also face threats that the dinosaurs never encountered. The possibility of self-inflicted extinction through weapons of our own creation, environmental degradation resulting from our own activities, and social fragmentation that could lead to civilizational collapse even in the absence of external catastrophe. The dinosaur example suggests that intelligence alone is insufficient to guarantee survival. Even creatures capable of genetic engineering, continental-scale agriculture, and biotechnology that surpassed our current capabilities ultimately succumbed to forces beyond their control or prediction. Their story serves as both inspiration and warning. Intelligence can achieve remarkable things, but it cannot transcend the fundamental vulnerabilities that characterize all complex systems operating in an uncertain universe. Yet within this sobering perspective lies a strange form of comfort. If dinosaur civilizations once existed, then intelligence is not a cosmic accident confined to a single species on a single planet during a brief moment of cosmic history. It may instead represent a fundamental property of complex systems, destined to emerge wherever the proper conditions exist and persist for as long as those conditions allow. We may be part of a much larger story, participants in an ongoing experiment that the universe is conducting with consciousness and creativity. This expanded perspective also suggests that the search for extraterrestrial intelligence may need to adopt radically different approaches. Instead of looking for radio signals or other electromagnetic emissions that would indicate human-like technologies, we might need to search for the subtle signatures of biological engineering, atmospheric modifications, or ecosystem-scale manipulations that could indicate the presence of civilizations following developmental pathways similar to those hypothesized for dinosaur society. The implications extend beyond astronomy to encompass our understanding of evolution itself. If intelligence has emerged multiple times on Earth, then consciousness may not be the rare and unlikely accident that some theories suggest, but rather a natural outcome of sufficient time, complexity, and environmental stability. The mechanisms that produced human intelligence may represent just one possible pathway among many, no more inevitable or special than the particular sequence of genetic mutations that led to any other evolutionary innovation. This decentering of human achievement forces us to confront our cosmic significance, or lack thereof, with unprecedented honesty. We are not the first intelligences to emerge on our planet, and we will almost certainly not be the last. Our technologies, our cultures, our philosophical and scientific achievements represent remarkable accomplishments, but they are not unique experiments in the history of consciousness. They are the latest iteration in a recurring pattern that may extend back hundreds of millions of years into the deep past and forward into futures we cannot imagine. The evidence for dinosaur civilization remains tantalizingly incomplete, forever poised between revelation and speculation. We may never achieve the definitive proof that would settle the question once and for all. The very nature of deep time ensures that most traces of ancient intelligence will remain forever beyond our reach, dissolved in acid rain, ground to dust by tectonic forces, or simply lost in the vast spaces between what happened and what we can prove happened. Yet the possibility itself has already changed us. once we have seriously considered the prospect that intelligence might be ancient, cyclical, and far more common than we assumed, we can never fully return to the comfortable certainties of anthropocentric thinking. The questions raised by the dinosaur civilization hypothesis will continue to haunt our exploration of the past and our planning for the future, regardless of whether we ever find conclusive answers. In the darkness of deep time, where certainty dissolves and speculation becomes the only form of exploration available to us, we are left with a choice. We can dismiss the anomalies and return to familiar narratives that place human intelligence at the center of cosmic significance. Or we can embrace the uncertainty and allow it to expand our conception of what intelligence might achieve, how it might manifest, and what its ultimate fate might be in a universe far stranger and more populated with consciousness than we have dared to imagine. The fossil record, with all its gaps and silences, may be trying to tell us a story far more remarkable than we have been prepared to hear. The chemical signatures in ancient rocks, the geometric patterns in prehistoric landscapes, the neural complexities revealed in dinosaur skulls, all of these may be fragments of a narrative that stretches across deep time, connecting us to predecessors we never suspected and successors we can barely envision. Standing in the Badlands where this journey began, watching the sun set over rocks that have witnessed the rise and fall of empires we're only beginning to imagine, we're forced to confront the most fundamental question of all. Are we alone in our intelligence, unique in our capacity for wonder and achievement, isolated in our brief moment of consciousness between the vast unconsciousness that preceded us and the silence that awaits us? Or are we part of something larger, participants in an ongoing experiment in intelligence and creativity that has been running for hundreds of millions of years and may continue for hundreds of millions more? The dinosaurs, whether they achieved civilization or remained forever trapped in the realm of instinct and survival, represent more than just another chapter in paleontological history. They embody the possibility that intelligence is not rare but recurrent, not fragile but resilient, not human but universal. In their bones and the rocks that entomb them, in the chemical traces they may have left and the genetic echoes that persist in their descendants, we glimpse the outlines of a story so vast and ancient that it challenges our most basic assumptions about consciousness, achievement, and our place in the cosmic order. The great questions remain unanswered, suspended in the space between evidence and speculation, between what we can prove and what we can imagine. But perhaps the questions themselves are more important than any answers we might find. In asking whether the dinosaurs built civilizations, we're really asking who we are, where we came from, and what our achievements might mean in the vast scales of time and space that dwarf all human experience. The silence of deep time holds its secrets jealously, but in that silence, we hear the echo of our own questions, reverberating across millions of years to connect us with intelligences that may have grappled with the same fundamental mysteries that define our own existence. Whether the dinosaurs were truly our predecessors in civilization or remained forever bound by the limits of their biology, they have become the mirror in which we see reflected our own hopes, fears, and cosmic ambitions. In the end, we are all creatures of deep time, temporary arrangements of matter and energy that briefly achieve the miracle of consciousness before returning to the elements from which we emerged. The story of intelligence on Earth, whether it began with us or extends back to the age of dinosaurs, is ultimately the story of the universe becoming aware of itself, asking questions about its own nature, and creating meaning in the face of cosmic indifference. The dinosaurs in their silence remind us that we too are temporary, that our civilizations will eventually join theirs in the geological record, and that our greatest achievements may someday be known only through chemical traces and ambiguous patterns in stone. But they also remind us that intelligence, once emerged, leaves echoes that persist across deep time, not in the artifacts it creates or the monuments it builds, but in the questions it asks and the wonder it brings to the contemplation of existence itself. These echoes in deep time connect us to predecessors we may never fully understand and successors we cannot imagine, binding us into a chain of consciousness that stretches across the history of our planet and perhaps beyond. In asking whether the dinosaurs built civilizations, we join our voices to that ancient chorus of intelligence, questioning its own nature and place in the cosmos, adding our own brief note to a song that began long before us, and will continue long after we have returned to silence. The truth, whatever it may be, lies buried in the deep past, waiting for future discoveries and new analytical techniques that may finally provide the answers we seek. Until then, we are left with wonder, uncertainty, and the profound responsibility that comes with being conscious in a universe that may be far more conscious than we ever dared to hope.